Hello and welcome into the Week 7 edition of the ETSN podcast. I'm Clint Buckley and I'm joined as always by Chandler Vessels. We have a jam-packed show coming your way. Everyone is in district now as we inch closer to the playoffs, and there are some big matchups across East Texas this week.
Yeah, lots of games to get out there and go see, so it should be a fun week.
Well, while most of the big games this week are in 4A, we're going to start with the District 17 5A opener between Ennis and Whitehouse. Chandler, you'll be there Friday night. What should we expect from these two teams?
Well, the main matchup to look at in this one, I think, is going to be Ennis's run game against Whitehouse's vaunted defensive line and linebacker group. You know, Ennis is putting up 257 yards per game on the ground. They primarily run the ball. They have a couple of good running backs in Tyson Thompson and James Harris, who are both over 400 yards rushing on the season. But Whitehouse has, at times this season, been pretty dominant in their rushing attack. They have a good defensive line headed by Texas State commit Trevor Lawrence, who has 6 tackles for loss already this season. Another guy who's really good on that defensive line is Christian Owens, who's got 14 tackles for loss, which is pretty high up there in the leaderboard for the state. So I think whichever team is able to sort of win that matchup, you know, Whitehouse has kind of struggled at times when they face teams who have good rushing attacks, Carthage, Kennedale.
Yep.
So how they handle this duo of Tyson Thompson and James Harris could end up being the deciding factor in the game. Another thing to watch for in this game when Whitehouse is on offense is their running back, Clayton Cook, who's been, I would say, their most consistent offensive threat this season. You know, they have Cameron Cantrell, who can do some damage, but Clayton Cook's been the most consistent so far, averaging 83 yards per game, 6 touchdowns. Hasn't had a game under 50 yards rushing this season, so if they're going to get some offense, I would say they'd count on him, maybe Cantrell too.
You know, I think they lose big to Kennedale, I think 56-13 going into their bye week. That can kind of be a double-edged sword. You know, you don't want to go into bye week, you know, coming off a performance like that, but at the same time, that gives the coaching staff tons of talking points to talk to the team about. And I think one of the big things is their rush defense, because early in the season, you know, I saw them in the second game against Chapel Hill. They did a really good job stopping the run. And then Carthage came to town, and you know, obviously Carthage is really good, but their offensive line kind of dictated the game. They won the line of scrimmage battle, and obviously Kennedale did the same thing a couple of weeks later. So it's kind of back to the drawing board for Whitehouse, especially up front this week. Because I mean, you're right; they do have the talent. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is really good. Christian Owens is another one. Darius Trimble, Mitchell Melrose. They have a lot of good players on that front four. And you know, if they play up to their capabilities, I think they can give Ennis a run. And Ennis is they're not fancy on offense. They do what they do. You know, they're going to run the ball. They don't run too many different plays. Not too many different formations. They're going to count on their offensive line winning most of those battles up front. And it should be an entertaining, I guess, sidebar to the game is how the two lines match up against one another, particularly when Ennis has the ball. So I think you're right on the money. It should be a lot of fun. Now on to Class 4A. We have some really intriguing 4A matchups this week, and we'll start in 4A Division 1 and District 8. We got Van at Brownsboro. Van, we knew they were going to be good this year, you know, and they've proved us right. They're 6-0. They're ranked in the top 10 in the state. Brownsboro, on the other hand, they're quietly kind of getting it done this year. They've won 4 out of 5 games, and they're playing at home against Van. You know, what do you see are the big keys or the big matchups in this game?
I think mainly I want to talk about Van's passing game. Obviously, Garrett Mosley is probably one of the best players in the area. You know, what he does not only in the passing game, but also on the ground game. You know, he has over 2,000 yards total this season.
Definition of an MVP.
Yes. I mean, he has scored 61% of Van's points this season. So it's safe to say, you know, they wouldn't be quite as good as they are without him. But, I want to give credit to their receiving core, too. I think they have probably the best receiving core in the area. They have 4 guys who can be relied on. Just almost 4 guys with 300 yards. You know, Ethan Robinson is at 299 right now, so just shy. But yeah, him having like 4 threats to go to is really helpful. As far as Brownsboro, they're not going to pass the ball a lot. They've run the ball pretty consistently this season, only 31 pass attempts so far this season. They're nearing close to 2,000 yards, though, so they do run the ball effectively. So how Van is able to handle that rushing attack, which is another 2-pronged rushing attack, another sort of another duo in the backfield there, will be a deciding factor in this game as well.
Another big one in Class 4A is Kilgore and Carthage. It seems like every week we talk about a big game for Carthage, and that's just the nature of their schedule this year. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the year about how just before the Liberty ILO game they were going to go on this crucial 5-game stretch, and that has reached the end. This is the last one. Carthage against Kilgore. At home in Carthage. Carthage goes back home for the first time since the Liberty ILO games, way back in week 2. So Carthage so far they've passed the test with flying colors. I mean they beat Liberty ILO, kind of outlasted them in the second half, a game you were at. They were able to control both sides of the ball against Whitehouse a week later, a team up a class in Class 5A. You and I both saw what they did against Gilmer in the second half. Kind of using their opportunistic defense to kind of pull away from Gilmer in that one. And then last week against Henderson, just domination from start to finish on both sides of the ball. A rivalry game on the road in Carthage's district opener. So they've got one more hurdle to climb, I think, in the regular season. And Kilgore, I think, could be the best team that they will face until the playoffs. I mean, Kilgore, they're averaging almost 400 rushing yards per game.
That's crazy. That's insane.
That is crazy, and they're doing it, and they're doing it with several different pieces. Their quarterback, Buddy Jackson, leads the team in rushing. He's got almost 700 yards in 6 games. But you also got Javori Hamilton. You've got Bryant Mumphrey. You've got Jaden Zachary. You've got a lot of different pieces in that Kilgore backfield, and the offensive line is good, and they've always seemed to be good because Kilgore runs the ball like this every year. While not 400 yards a game, they're very good on the ground. And that's going to be important for Carthage to hone in on defensively. And speaking of Carthage defense, man, I think they might be the most overshadowed unit in all of East Texas because when you think Carthage, when you talk Carthage, everybody wants to start with Keontae Ingram, the Texas commit, the superstar running back. But it's been their defense. It's kind of been overshadowed. I mean, we saw what they did with to Gilmer a couple of weeks ago. They completely changed the tide in the game. It wasn't the offense; it was the defense.
It was the defense completely took over that game. No points for Gilmer in the second half, and I mean that's the thing that Carthage does. Even if they're not having a good first half, they can make those second half adjustments, and that's what makes them such a dominant team. They dominated Henderson last week on defense too. So
yeah, I mean it's a thing that it always gets overshadowed by offense. I feel like defense. It's not quote unquote sexy to talk about the defense. It's the offense. It's the big play receivers. It's the quarterback. It's the dynamic running back. But the defense has really come through, and that's the first thing that Scott Surratt wanted to talk about after last week's win over Henderson was the defense. Because, aside from they give up a touchdown in the first quarter, but that was coming off a 73-yard kickoff return, so it was a very short field that Henderson was working with. Really, Henderson didn't sniff the end zone again until Carthage's 2s were in the game in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, they pretty much dominated Henderson's offense, a good Henderson offense, for the majority of that game last week. And they're going to have their hands full against Kilgore this week. But what I think sets Carthage apart from most other teams is they're so balanced and multifaceted on offense. They can beat you so many different ways on offense. They obviously have the running game with Keontae Ingram, but if that doesn't work, which it was kind of slowed last week by Henderson. Ingram was held to a season low in yards because Henderson really keyed on him. They forced Carthage to throw, and they did. They had a couple of long passing touchdowns to D. Bowens, both over 70 yards. I know, by the way, they also have DeWaylen Ingram, who is money in the red zone. And in the intermediate game, and when you pay too much attention to DeWaylen Ingram, putting a safety over the top, and you leave D. Bowens 1-on-1, that's just a recipe for disaster. It's almost like a pick your poison when you're trying to defend Carthage's offense, and I think that's what sets them apart, and I think that's what makes them a favorite to once again win state. But first things first, They have to get past Kilgore. The winner of this game is going to have the leg up in the district championship race. Both are undefeated. The only two undefeated teams left in that district. So it ought to be a lot of fun. Again, that's at 7:30 Friday night in Carthage. Kilgore Carthage, always a good game. It's obviously a rematch of the 2013 state championship game. Not sure if you realize that they used to not be in the same district. They were in different regions. Because East Texas, they split the regions up where, half of East Texas is in Region 2, half of it is in Region 3. And then the way they do it in the playoffs, the Region 1 and Region 2 winners meet in the semifinals, and the 3 and 4 winners meet in the other semifinals. And it just so happened that year that I believe Kilgore was in Region 2, the last district in Region 2, and Carthage was in the first district in Region 3. And they ended up meeting in the championship game. Two schools that are separated by, 30 miles, 40 miles, ended up playing each other for the state title, and now they're battling it out in the same district. So always a lot of fun, Kilgore and Carthage. Can't wait for that one. Another big one in Class 4A, Pleasant Grove against Gilmer. Pleasant Grove is 5-0, and they have been just dominating the opposition. They're outscoring teams on average 45-12 per game. And they're doing it behind a dominant ground game that's averaging almost 300 yards per game. But they're kind of sneaky in the passing game. Their quarterback Ben Harmon, who's only a sophomore, threw for 4 touchdowns last week, and you don't expect that with a team that runs the wing T offense. But if you pay too much attention to the ground game in Pleasant Grove, they can beat you through the air, and that's something that Gilmer's going to have to keep an eye on this week if they want to avoid their second regular season loss. Gilmer hasn't lost 2 games in the regular season since 2009. So they've already lost to Carthage, and if they lose to Pleasant Grove, that's history. And not only will they have 2 losses, but they'll have 2 home losses, which is even rarer. So I'm looking forward to this game, and I think a big key is going to be the turnover battle. Gilmer has been very turnover prone so far this season. Poppy Brown, as good as he is, as many yards and touchdowns as he's amassed over his career in the first half of this season, he's turned the ball over. He has 8 interceptions in 5 games. And Pleasant Grove's defense has thrived on creating turnovers and turning those into points on offense. They've already forced 14 turnovers in 5 games, so almost 3 per game. So if Gilmer is not careful with the ball, if they don't do a better job of protecting it, Pleasant Grove is going to have a chance to come away from Gilmer with a win, which would improve them to 6-0, and I think that would make a big statement statewide for Pleasant Grove. Not only will they be 6-0, but they'll have a signature win over a proud program like Gilmer in district, and who knows where that can take them. So that's a big one. I can't wait for that one. And then one more game in that district I want to briefly touch on is Spring Hill at Gladewater. How about Spring Hill? They're 5-0 on the year, and while they're playing a Gladewater team that's 1-4, I think Gladewater's strength of schedule has been a little bit better. So this is still kind of a big test for Spring Hill. I guess we're going to find out if they're for real.
Yeah, you sort of alluded to the strength of schedule between Spring Hill and Gladewater. Spring Hill's won each of their games by an average of 34 points. So, by an average of 34 points, they have a 34-point margin of victory. Their closest game was 36-20 against White Oak. They're only giving up 17.4 points per game. They have a couple of threats, and Dason Attaway, who's got over 400 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns this season, and 2 400-yard rushers in Keontae Stoker and Zach Tolpa. So Gladewater, on the other hand, is they're 1-4. They played a tough schedule. So, but they're only putting up 12 points a game. I would expect Spring Hill to win this game, but you never know.
Yeah, Gladewater. It's. I guess we're going to find out if the scheduling the tough non-district is going to pay off for Gladewater.
Yeah.
Because Spring Hill, they're 5-0, and they're doing what they should be doing. They should be beating up on teams that they're clearly better than. And I think this is a more evenly matched game than Spring Hill has faced this year. So we'll see how they do against a team that's more closely, talent-wise, if it's going to work out for Spring Hill this week. But I think that's a very intriguing game to watch, and it could kind of tell the story about how the district's going to go as far as playoffs go over the next couple of weeks. So A lot of big games in 4A this week. We'll have a bunch more across the area that are going on. I mean, we could talk about 20 games, but unfortunately we're under time constraints and we can't get to everything. But a lot of big games going on this week. Like we said at the top, it's the district opener for a lot of districts. So we're gonna keep our eyes peeled, and we should learn a lot about our teams this week in East Texas. Before we get out of here, we want to give a big shout out to our offensive and defensive players of the week. On offense, Tenaha quarterback C.J. Horn passed for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns in number 1 Tenaha 65-0 rout of West Sabine. Tenaha is rolling. We don't expect that train to stop anytime soon. They're one of the favorites to get to Arlington for the state championship games, and C.J. Horn is a big reason for that. So congrats to C.J. Our defensive player of the week.
Yeah, out of Palestine is Josh Williams, defensive back, 13 tackles, 2 for loss, a fumble recovery, an interception, and a blocked extra point return for 2 points. So he was just all over the field in their 41-21 victory against Center, so well-deserved for him. Yeah,
just filled up the stat sheet with that performance, and obviously congratulations again to C.J. Horn and Josh Williams, our offensive and defensive players of the week. That's going to wrap it up for this week. Be sure to check out all of the Week 7 preview material we have on the site right now, ETSN.fm. And if you haven't done so already, you can go to Google Play or the App Store to download our free mobile app, ETSN mobile app. It's the perfect way to follow along on Friday nights to all the scores around the area with the best live scoreboard in East Texas. I know we're biased, but it's the truth. It's presented by America's Car Mart. To get in touch with either Chandler or myself, the best way to do that is to hit us up on Twitter. He's at Chandler Vessels. I'm at Clint Buckley. For Chandler, I'm Clint Buckley. Thanks for watching. We'll come back around next week.